I woke up to the sound of papers rustling above my head, and the first thing I heard was my daughter's voice saying, "She won't remember a thing in this state." For a moment, I thought I was still dreaming. At 74, I've had my share of groggy mornings, but nothing like this. This fog, this weight on my limbs, this strange detachment from my own body. And yet, their voices cut through it, sharp as needles. "Just hold her hand steady." Yes, like that. "We need the signature before the nurse comes back." I didn't open my eyes. Not because I couldn't, though that was part of it, but because some instinct, old and reliable, whispered to stay still, to listen, to breathe quietly, to let them believe I was gone somewhere far away where mothers don't overhear their own children. The hospital lights hummed softly above me. Pain throbbed in my left hip. The fracture that had sent me here. Broken bones and broken routines. I remembered signing something when I was first admitted. Something the nurse pressed into my hand while the morphine blurred the walls. After that, only fragments. Voices. Ceilings passing overhead. Cold water on my lips. But this was different. A man's voice, my son-in-law Gary, muttered, "There, it's done. She'll thank us later." My daughter, Carol, sighed in that tone she always used when she pretended to be burdened by love. It's for her own good. She can't manage things anymore. And the house, well, it's better we take care of it. My house. Something cold moved through me, cutting through the fog sharper than the painkillers. I tried to swallow, but my tongue felt thick, uncooperative, as if it belonged to someone else. A nurse walked in then, her footsteps brisk, her tone bright. I heard papers being tucked away, chairs scraping. When she leaned over me, adjusting the IV, she smiled like everything was fine. Maybe she thought it was. "Mrs. Eldridge," she said gently, "you're waking up. That's good. Take your time." I didn't feel good. I felt hollow, like something had been taken from the room while my eyes were closed. Carol stepped close to the bed. Her perfume, a sweet, sharp thing she wore since her 50s, filled my lungs. "Mom," she said too lightly, "you're doing great. The doctor said you'll be discharged soon, but only if someone supervises things for a while. We've already handled some paperwork to make things easier." Easier for whom, she didn't say. I blinked at her, forcing my eyes to focus. Her face floated above me, familiar and distant at the same time. She smiled, but her jaw was tight. She wasn't expecting me to understand anything yet, or to remember. I tried to speak, but only a dry rasp came out. Carol patted my hand. "Don't strain yourself. You signed everything this morning, don't you remember? It was all for your protection." Protection. The word tasted like metal. Gary checked his watch. "We should go," he said. "The lawyer needs the documents today." Lawyer. The fog in my head swirled, thick but not thick enough to hide the dread settling in my chest. Something had happened here, something more than a few hospital forms. I could feel the truth scratching at the edges of my mind, sharp and insistent. They left as quickly as they had come, walking out with quiet footsteps, like people leaving a room where someone is dying. The nurse lowered the bed rails and fussed with my pillows. "You'll feel clearer in a few hours," she said. "That medication makes everyone fuzzy." Fuzzy. Fuzzy enough to sign things I didn't understand. Or things I never should have signed. I closed my eyes again, but not because I was tired. Because I finally understood. Whatever they had done, they'd done it while I wasn't fully living, not fully awake. Barely myself. And somehow I knew it wasn't small. It wasn't harmless. It was something big enough that they needed my hand, my name, my silence. When I opened my eyes again, the fog was still there. But beneath it, a thin, steady thread of clarity began to tighten. They thought they'd caught me weak. They had no idea who I still was. By the time the medication loosened its grip on my mind, afternoon light was slipping across the hospital wall, thin, pale, merciless. I lay still, the way an animal does when it finally understands it has been cornered. My thoughts were slow but steady now, moving through the fog with purpose. What paperwork had they meant? What exactly had they rushed to sign before the nurse came back? Why did my own daughter avoid my eyes when she said I'd already agreed to everything? I'd given Carol many things over the years, my time, my patience, my forgiveness, but never my permission to handle my life like a broken piece of furniture she could rearrange. A young intern walked in with a tablet, cheerful in that way people are when they haven't yet seen how families behave around illness. "How's the pain today, Mrs. Eldridge?" "Manageable," I answered. My voice was steadier now. "I'd like to see what I signed when I was admitted." He blinked. "Of course. I can print the consent forms for you." Consent forms, hospital papers. Simple things. But the ones my daughter carried out of here? Those weren't hospital papers. I knew that much with the absolute clarity of instinct. A mother always knows when her child has crossed a line, even before she knows which one. I waited until he left and the hallway quieted again. Then I pressed the call button. The older nurse, the one with kind eyes and a tired spine, came in. Her name tag read Noreen, and she had the air of a woman who had listened to more whispered confessions than any priest. I needed someone like her. "Noreen," I said softly, "were you here earlier, when my daughter and son-in-law visited?" She hesitated, a flicker, tiny but unmistakable. "Yes," she said carefully. "I checked on you right after they left." "I heard them," I murmured. "They were signing something, using my hand. You saw them with papers?" Her lips tightened, not unkindly, more like a person choosing her words with caution. "I can't discuss personal family documents, Mrs. Eldridge. But," she lowered her voice, "I will say this. You were not in a condition to make any legal decisions this morning. Not in any meaningful way." That was enough. Not an answer, but permission to trust my own unease. "Did they leave anything here?" I asked. "No. They were very quick to take everything with them." Of course they had been. The intern returned with a small stack of hospital forms, routine admission, surgery consent, medication disclosures. Clean, stamped, legitimate. My signature on them was shaky, but mine. The rest, the real papers, were gone. By late afternoon, Carol reappeared, all forced brightness and shallow concern. "Mom, you look so much better. I told you, once the pain meds wear off, you'll start feeling clear again." Clear. She kept using that word, as if she needed me to believe it, as if clarity was something she wanted for me at all. "Carol," I said slowly, measuring every syllable, "what was I signing this morning?" Her smile didn't crack. It froze. "Oh, just some things to help you while you recover. We've taken some responsibilities off your plate. You don't need to worry about bills or the house. Gary and I are stepping in to help." Help. People who intend to help don't rush signatures while you're drifting between consciousness and the void. What responsibilities exactly? A shadow crossed her face. "Mom, let's not get into details here. You'll just get overwhelmed. The important thing is you won't have to think about any of it anymore. It was the any of it that told me everything. My home, my bank accounts, my decisions. Things she believed belonged to her now. She patted my arm, a gesture that might have been tender, if not for the distance in her eyes. A daughter who loved me would have been worried about my fracture, my pain, my recovery, not paperwork. Rest, Mom, she said. We'll handle everything. I watched her leave. She didn't turn around. The room felt colder after she walked out, as if she'd taken not warmth but truth with her. I turned my head toward the window, forced my breath into steady rhythms. I needed information. I needed strength. And both would come back to me, just like my voice had. But one thing was already clear enough to stand on. Whatever they'd done it expecting I'd never fight back. And that thought, more than the pain, more than the betrayal, sparked something small and bright inside my chest. A beginning. Night in a hospital is a strange thing. It isn't dark, not really. Machines blink, footsteps echo, doors sigh open and closed. People whisper even when no one is sleeping. I lay awake through most of it, letting the hours settle into me, letting my thoughts fall into place one by one like stones in a garden path. I was clearer now, clear enough to understand that clarity alone wouldn't save me. I needed proof. I needed witnesses. And before all of that, I needed patience. Patience was something age had given me in abundance, though my daughter had always mistaken it for weakness. In the early morning, the door opened quietly. It wasn't a nurse. The steps were too light. I knew before she spoke. Grandma? Lena. 19, all long limbs and messy hair, a girl who saw too much and said too little. The only one in the family whose visits felt like company, not obligation. I managed a small smile. You're up early. I came as soon as Mom left the house, she said, dropping into the chair beside my bed. She was acting weird this morning. I heard her telling Dad something about getting everything submitted today before anyone asks questions. I didn't understand. I felt something tighten inside me. Not fear, exactly, but recognition. A child shouldn't have to overhear their parents scheming, but then again, I shouldn't have been their target. I reached for her hand. Lena, listen to me. Something happened yesterday. Something I need you to keep to yourself for now. Her eyes widened, full of worry. Are you in danger? Such a dramatic question, and yet, in her place, I might have asked the same. When people you trust start making decisions over your unconscious body, danger stops being a dramatic idea and becomes a practical problem. No, not danger, I said. But I need information, and you're the only person I trust to tell me the truth without twisting it. She straightened, ready, as if I'd given her something important to hold. I'd forgotten how seriously children take the trust of adults they still believe in. Did Mom say what papers they brought here yesterday? Lena bit her lip. She didn't want me in the room when they were talking, but I heard Dad say something about transfer papers. And Mom said, once it's official, she won't be able to change anything back. Transfer papers. The words slid into place like the final piece of a cruel puzzle. They hadn't been signing for my surgery, or my care, or my rehabilitation. They had been transferring something out of my hands and into theirs. My breathing stayed steady. Years of quiet suffering teach you how to keep your face still. Lena watched me, waiting for my reaction. I squeezed her hand gently, grounding myself in the warmth of someone who still cared. Grandma, she whispered, Did you really sign something? Like, on purpose? I shook my head slowly. No, I don't believe I did. Relief washed across her face first, then anger. Beautiful, young, righteous anger that I'd once had myself. They can't do that to you, she said. You weren't even awake yesterday morning. You didn't know where you were when I came in during lunch. Mom kept saying you were resting, but you looked drugged. Drugged. Yes, that was the word. And they'd taken advantage of it. Lena, I said quietly, I need you to do something for me, but only if you feel safe doing it. She leaned in as if someone might overhear us, though the hallway was empty. Anything. I need you to check something at the house, my desk drawers, my filing cabinet, places where I keep documents. I paused. I want to know what's missing. She nodded without hesitation. I can go today. I'll say I'm grabbing clothes for you. Mom won't question it. Clever girl. Observant. Calm. She would have made a good nurse. There was a silence then. Warm, heavy, not uncomfortable. The kind of silence only two people truly aligned can share. She looked at me carefully. Grandma? Are you afraid? I let the question hang in the quiet. Fear wasn't the right word. I'd felt fear when I was widowed at 57, when I'd woken up from a heart arrhythmia in my 60s, when I'd watched the savings I'd built crumble under medical bills that grew like weeds. This wasn't fear. No, I said softly. I'm angry. That's different. And anger, used right, can be very useful. Lena nodded slowly, her eyes shining with something I recognized. Courage waking up. When she left to go to the house, I felt the room breathe differently. It's a strange thing. How hope can make even a cold hospital pillow feel warmer. Later that afternoon, as the sun dipped through the blinds, Carol walked in again. Her purse was bulging with papers. She kept her phone in her hand, screen down, hiding something. She smiled too quickly. Mom, I've arranged everything for your discharge next week. After that, you'll stay with us for a while. It'll be easier that way. For her, not for me. And the house? I asked lightly, as if it were a passing curiosity. She froze for the smallest fraction of a moment. I told you, she said, forcing the smile back. You don't need to worry about that anymore. But I did worry, and soon enough, she would too. Because the quiet woman she remembered, the one who forgave everything, overlooked everything, survived everything, had felt something shift today, something final, something strong. Lena returned the next morning before Carol could arrive, her cheeks flushed from the cold, her breath fast the way it gets when someone has seen something they wish they hadn't. Grandma, she whispered the moment she closed the door behind her. Your desk is practically empty. All the folders, bank statements, property records, the insurance papers, everything is gone. A quiet, steady pain opened inside me. Not physical, something deeper. Something that had been forming since the moment I felt my limp hand being guided across paper. What about the filing cabinet? I asked. I checked. The keys were missing from their hook. The cabinet was locked, but the bottom drawer, it was open a little, like someone forgot to close it. Her hands shook as she pulled a folded sheet from her jacket pocket. This fell behind it, she said. I think they missed it. I unfolded it slowly. It was a photocopy, grainy, smudged, but unmistakable. My signature, or rather, the trembling, pathetic line that someone could claim was mine. The document title was blurred, but one phrase was clear enough to make my blood warm. Authorization of financial management and property transfer. I stared at it for a long moment, letting the truth settle inside me without panic. Panic clouds judgment. I had no room left for clouds. "Did Mom see you in the office?" I asked. Lena shook her head. "No, she was out running errands. Dad was home but in the garage." "Good. That bought us time." I folded the paper carefully and slid it under the thin hospital blanket, letting the weight of it rest against my leg. Proof. Not enough yet, but a beginning. "Grandma," Lena whispered, "why would they do this? Mom said they were just helping while you recover." I looked at her. This girl who still believed that parents meant well by default. I used to believe that too. Then life teaches you. Sometimes the people closest to you are the ones who expect your silence the most. "People get afraid," I said quietly. "Afraid of losing control. Afraid of losing comfort. Sometimes afraid of losing money they think they deserve." Lena lowered her eyes. She understood more than she wished to. The door opened then, and she straightened instantly, stepping back just as Carol swept into the room with the heavy cheerfulness of someone performing motherhood for an audience. "Mom, Lena, well, isn't this nice?" Her eyes flicked to Lena's coat, her hair, her shoes, evaluating, measuring. "You didn't wake your grandmother too early, I hope." "She asked me to come," Lena said. Not a lie. Not the whole truth either. Carol didn't like answers she couldn't control. Her smile sharpened. "Well," she said briskly, setting her purse down, "I've brought a few more papers we'll need to go over today. Just simple things. Nothing stressful." My fingers tightened around the blanket, where the photocopy hid like a heartbeat. I steadied my breath. "What kind of papers, Carol?" "Oh, details for the discharge and some authorizations. You've already signed the main ones yesterday, so this will be quick." Lena looked at me, and in her eyes I saw the question. "Will you confront her?" Not yet. Not until I had every piece I needed. Not until the strike would land cleanly. "I'm tired today," I said softly. "My head's not clear enough for reading. We'll do it tomorrow." Carol's smile faltered. Barely, but I saw it. She wasn't prepared for resistance. She'd expected the same old mother who nodded, who trusted, who never questioned. "Mom, we really should do them today," she pushed. "It's just easier. Everything is already arranged." "I said tomorrow," I repeated gently, but firmly enough that Lena's eyes widened. Carol bit her lip, frustration flickering through her composure. She tucked the folder back into her purse. "Fine," she said, "but don't delay. There are deadlines." Deadlines. Yes, I imagined there were. After she left, Lena exhaled like someone surfacing from deep underwater. "Grandma," she whispered, "what are you going to do?" I smoothed the blanket, feeling the paper beneath my fingers. Evidence of betrayal. Evidence of opportunity. "I'm going to remember who I am," I said. "And then I'm going to make sure they remember too." For the first time in days, Lena smiled, not with girlish lightness, but with something sharper, steadier. Respect. By the time afternoon shadows stretched across the floor, I felt my strength settle back into me. Not physical strength. That would take longer. But the kind that matters when the world around you begins to shrink without your permission. I'd spent most of my life making myself smaller for others, softening my edges, smoothing their worries. It was strange, almost unfamiliar, to feel a different kind of steadiness rising in me now. When my phone buzzed on the tray beside me, I reached for it slowly. I half expected Carol again, another chirping message about efficiency or deadlines. but the name on the screen was one I hadn't seen in years. Thomas Brewer, my old attorney. It was Lena. She'd done more in a single evening than her parents had done for me in years. I answered. My voice came out stronger than I expected. Thomas? Mary, he said, and his tone told me he'd been briefed. I hear you might need some advice regarding documents signed under questionable circumstances. Questionable, I repeated, and a thin smile pulled at my mouth. That's a gentle word for it. Yes, he agreed. But the law isn't gentle. And it doesn't favor signatures obtained under heavy medication. I felt a breath leave me, steady, controlled. Relief wasn't the right word. It was something closer to validation. I wasn't imagining what they'd done. I wasn't being dramatic. I wasn't being old. Thomas, I said quietly, I need to know if those papers can be undone. If you were impaired, yes, but I'll need medical records and any proof you can get of your condition at the time. He paused. Your granddaughter mentioned you might already have something? My hand slid over the blanket, feeling the faint outline of the wrinkled photocopy. I have enough to start, I said. Not everything yet. Good, I'll come by tomorrow. In the meantime, don't sign anything, not a single page. Even a harmless form can be twisted. A soft knock came at the door then, and I knew immediately it wasn't Thomas who would walk through it. I won't sign, I said. Not ever again without you. Wise, he replied. Rest, Mary. Tomorrow we begin. I hung up just as the door opened. Gary walked in first. He never came alone unless he needed something. His cologne arrived before he did, thick and expensive, the kind men wear when they want to mask insecurity. Mary, he said, forcing warmth into his voice, we're here to help with the remaining forms, just a few details the hospital needs. But I'd already seen the folder in his hand, the thick one, the one Carol had tried to push at me yesterday. Hospital forms don't come in thick folders. Carol followed on his heels, smiling too brightly. Mom, you look so much better. I think we should finish the paperwork while your mind is nice and clear, just to keep things smooth. Smooth, for them. I folded my hands neatly on my lap. No. The word surprised even me with how easily it came out. Simple, unshaking. Carol blinked as if she hadn't heard me correctly. No? She repeated, giving a nervous laugh. Mom, I don't think you understand. These forms, I understand enough, I said. I'm not signing anything today. Gary stepped forward. Mary, this is necessary for your discharge. We can't move ahead unless... It's not necessary, I said. And it has nothing to do with the hospital. The silence that followed was sharp. Carol's face tightened. She'd spent her whole adult life believing she could steer me with a smile and a sigh. Now she was looking at a stranger, and she didn't know what to do with her. Mom, she said sharply, you're making this difficult. No, I answered. I'm making it clear. For a moment, something ugly flashed in her eyes. Not rage, fear. She wasn't afraid of losing me. She was afraid of losing whatever she'd taken. Fine, she said, grabbing the folder so roughly its edges bent. We'll come back tomorrow. But we can't keep waiting. You're putting everything at risk. I watched them walk out with hurried, angry steps. Only when the door clicked shut did I let myself exhale. They thought they were running out of time. What they didn't know, what they never imagined, was that I'd already started the clock on them. I didn't sleep much that night, but it wasn't the pain or the stiffness that kept me awake. It was the feeling of pieces slowly falling into place, not neatly, not yet, but enough that the picture was beginning to show its outline. The fog in my mind had lifted, leaving something sharper behind. Purpose. Around 6 in the morning, Noreen came in to check my vitals. She didn't say much at first, but she had that look nurses get when they've seen enough families to know when something smells wrong. "You're clearer today," she said, as she wrapped the cuff around my arm. "Yes," I answered. "Clearer than yesterday." She hesitated, then lowered her voice. "Your daughter asked for copies of your charts yesterday, and your medication logs." I kept my breathing even. "And did you give them to her?" "No," she said firmly. "I told her copies have to be requested in writing by you." She didn't like that. I'm sure she didn't. Noreen sighed. "I've been doing this work for 30 years. I've seen children rush to help their parents, and I've seen children rush to help themselves. I'm not allowed to advise you legally, but—" She paused. "Make sure you have someone on your side." "I do," I said. "He'll be here today." She nodded, like that was the right answer. Then she tucked the blanket around me with surprising gentleness. It's a strange thing, how even small acts of care can feel like armor. Later that morning, while Carol was no doubt pacing her kitchen and rehearsing new strategies, Lena slipped into my room again. Her hair was pulled back this time, her face pale with something between worry and determination. "Grandma," she whispered, "I found more." She reached into her tote bag and pulled out a small notebook, leather-bound, worn. I recognized it instantly. It was the one I used to jot reminders. Bill due dates, appointments, account numbers. Nothing dramatic, nothing secret. Just the sort of information that becomes dangerously useful in the wrong hands. "It was under your mattress at home," she said. "Not even hidden well, like someone put it there quickly." I opened it. Several pages were missing, torn out cleanly. "Did you see who took them?" I asked. "No, but Mom kept going into your room yesterday, and she told Dad that everything she needs is in motion now." The air felt heavier for a moment. Not because I was shocked, but because hearing it out loud made the shape of their plan unmistakable. They weren't just meddling, they were calculating, and they thought time was on their side. Lena watched my face carefully. "Are you angry?" "Yes," I said softly, but not surprised. She looked guilty, like she felt she should have warned me sooner. I touched her hand. "This isn't your burden," I said. "You're helping more than you know." Before she could reply, there was a knock on the door. Slow, deliberate. Not Carol, not Gary. I knew before he stepped in. Thomas Brewer. His hair was whiter now, his glasses thicker, but his posture was the same, straight-backed, quietly confident. He nodded at Lena, then at me. "Shall we talk privately?" he asked. Lena squeezed my hand. "I'll wait outside." When the door closed behind her, Thomas pulled a chair close to my bed. "All right," he said. "Tell me exactly what happened." I told him, plainly, without embellishment. The drugged haze, the guided hand, the whispers, the missing documents, the photocopy Lena found, Carol's push to finish details that had nothing to do with the hospital. He listened without interrupting, his pen moving across a small legal pad. When I finished, he tapped the paper lightly. "This is more than enough to challenge whatever they filed," he said. "A signature obtained under impairment is voidable, especially if coercion can be shown." "I don't want to fight," I said quietly, "but I won't be erased." His eyes softened. "Mary, a fight has already begun. The difference is now you're not fighting alone." He opened his briefcase, pulled out a set of forms, not thick, not intimidating, just straightforward documents with my name printed neatly at the top. "These," he said, "declare that any documents signed by you in the last 72 hours are disputed due to medical incapacitation. They also restrict third-party access to your accounts until the matter is reviewed." A shield placed in my hands. "Can you sign them?" he asked gently. My fingers trembled, not with fear, but with a steadiness returning to me like an old friend. I signed, clearly, firmly. Thomas nodded. "Good. This puts us a step ahead. Now, one more question." He looked directly into my eyes. "Mary, do you want control back? Fully? Even if it means upsetting your daughter?" I felt the weight of the question settle, and then I felt it lighten, because the answer had been forming in me since the moment I heard my daughter whisper over my unconscious body. "Yes," I said. "I do." He smiled, not triumphantly, just respectfully. "Then we're on the right path." Outside the door, I heard footsteps, sharp, familiar. "Carol." Thomas stood. "Don't say anything," he murmured. "Let me talk." I lay back against the pillows as the door swung open, and my daughter walked in, holding a new folder in her hands. She didn't know yet that the world had shifted under her feet. But she would. Carol walked in with the stride of someone who believed she still controlled the room. She always had that walk, purposeful, polished, too quick for genuine warmth. She took one look at Thomas, straightened her shoulders, and forced a smile that never reached her eyes. "Oh," she said with practiced surprise, "Mr. Brewer, I didn't realize you still handled my mother's legal matters." Thomas didn't bother returning the smile. "Mrs. Caldwell," he said with a polite nod, "your mother requested my counsel." Requested? The word landed exactly where it needed to. Carol's jaw tightened for a moment, just a flicker, but enough to tell me she hadn't expected this. She stepped closer to the bed, placing her hand on the rail like a claim. "Mom," she said softly, "you know how stressful legal things are for you. You didn't have to call anyone. Gary and I already worked everything out." Thomas spoke before I could. "Yes," he said. "I'm aware." Her head snapped toward him. "Excuse me?" "I'm aware," he repeated calmly, "that you and your husband obtained signatures from your mother while she was under heavy medication. I'm also aware that documents were removed from her home without her consent." The silence that followed was thick, tense, almost physical. Carol's face went pale, then blotchy, with controlled anger. "We didn't take anything," she said sharply. "We gathered important papers for safekeeping. Mom wanted our help." I watched her carefully. I'd heard this tone before, when she lied as a child and didn't know yet how to do it well. Thomas folded his hands. "Mrs. Caldwell, I'll be direct. Your mother has formally disputed any documents signed within the last 72 hours. She has also restricted all third-party access to her accounts, effective immediately." It was almost fascinating to see how quickly a person could change. Her expression froze, her fingers stiffened on the bedrail, and for a second, she looked like a woman standing on a cliff's edge, realizing the ground was no longer solid under her. "What?" she whispered. She can't do that." At last I spoke. My voice was quiet, even, but it cut through the air like a line drawn across sand. "I already did." She turned toward me as if seeing me clearly for the first time in years. There was no gentleness left in her eyes, only calculation giving way to panic. "Mom, think about this," she said, lowering her voice. "You're recovering from surgery. You're emotional. You don't understand what's at stake." I held her gaze. I understand perfectly. Thomas stood, closing his folder. Mrs. Caldwell, from this point forward, any conversation about your mother's property, finances, or personal decisions will go through me, and only me. That was when the mask finally cracked. "This is ridiculous," she snapped. "We were trying to help her. She can't live alone anymore. The house is too big. She needs supervision. We're trying to protect her future." I interrupted gently. "Then why did you hide the papers? Why did you sign them over my head? Why did you tear pages out of my notebook?" Her mouth opened, but no words came out. The truth had landed, and she felt its weight. For the first time in many years, Carol looked small. Not in size. She had always been taller, louder, more forceful, but in certainty. She had spent so long assuming my quiet meant weakness that she couldn't recognize resolve when she finally met it. She looked at Thomas again, searching for a loophole. "We can challenge this," she muttered. "We can say she's confused, impaired. The medication—" Thomas lifted a hand. "Please be careful. Claims like that can easily turn against the accuser. Especially when medical staff can testify to the patient's awareness." Carol glanced at the door, as if expecting a nurse to rush in and deny everything. But Noreen was at the station, and she had seen enough to be a formidable witness if needed. "I think you should go home," I said softly. "We'll talk when things calm down." But she didn't move. Instead, she stared at me with a look I'd never seen on her face. One part disbelief, one part anger, and one part something almost like betrayal, as if I had wronged her. Then she gathered her purse, her folder, her pride. "This isn't over," she said, and she walked out. Thomas waited until the door closed behind her. "It's beginning," he said quietly. "But you handled yourself well." I nodded, letting the tension drain slowly from my shoulders. For the first time since the fracture, I didn't feel broken. I felt awake. The hospital discharged me 3 days later. Not because I was fully healed. My hip still protested every time I stood, but because I insisted. I didn't want to spend another night in a place where my daughter could walk in with a folder and a smile that meant danger. Thomas arranged everything. He made sure the hospital social worker documented my mental clarity. Noreen gave me a copy of my medication logs with a quiet nod, the kind a woman gives another woman when she knows the road ahead won't be smooth. Gary came to pick me up, not Carol. She hadn't visited since the day Thomas confronted her. That told me more than any argument could. Gary tried to act normal, humming along with the radio as he drove, tapping the steering wheel like a man whose conscience was perfectly clean. But his eyes kept cutting sideways toward me, as if he expected me to demand explanations he wasn't prepared to give. "You'll be staying with us," he said casually, as though it were already settled. "At least until you're mobile again. It's just easier." I looked out the window. The trees along the road were bare, their branches reaching upward like tired hands. "No," I said quietly. "I'm going home." He laughed softly. "Mary, you can't manage alone right now." I turned my head just enough to meet his eyes. I said, "I'm going home." He didn't answer after that. When we pulled into my driveway, I saw immediately that something was wrong. The curtains were drawn. Carol never left them that way. A lamp was on in the front room in the middle of the day. And the front door, the lock had been changed. A new silver cylinder where my old brass one used to be. Gary put the car in park too quickly. Oh, Carol thought it would be safer. New lock, stronger deadbolt. We'll get you a key once everything's sorted. Once everything's sorted. Meaning, once they knew whether their stolen papers would hold up. I stepped out of the car slowly, leaning on my cane. "Open the door," I said. He hesitated, then unlocked it. Inside, my home smelled different, like someone else's perfume and furniture polish I never used. The rooms looked rearranged, not dramatically, but enough that the air felt wrong. A few framed photographs were missing from the mantel. My sewing basket wasn't in its corner, and the drawer where I kept my spare checkbooks was half open and empty. They had gone through everything. Gary hovered behind me. "Try not to get overwhelmed. Carol just wanted to organize my life," I finished for him, without asking. He swallowed hard. "She's only trying to help." I let my eyes sweep across the room one more time. They'd searched my drawers, my files, my closets. They had touched things that had belonged to my mother, my husband, pieces of my life they never valued, but suddenly considered theirs. "Gary," I said, turning to him, "go home." He blinked. "But Carol said," "I know what she said. Go home." Something in my voice must have reached him. He nodded stiffly and left without another word. When the door closed, I stood in the center of my living room, breathing in the quiet. Not the peaceful kind, the violated kind. But even through that, I felt something steady rise in me. This was my house, my life, my name on every deed and every memory. And now I knew exactly what they were willing to do. That made my next steps easier, not harder. I lowered myself into my armchair, the one with worn edges from years of use, and waited for the familiar sound of footsteps. Lena had a key, and she always came. 10 minutes later, the door opened softly. "Grandma?" she called. "I'm here," I answered. She stepped in, her eyes scanning the room, taking in the changes immediately. "They went through everything," she whispered. "Yes," I said. "But we're done letting them." For the first time, my voice didn't shake at all. Thomas arrived the next morning just after 9. I heard the firm knock, steady and measured, the kind that belonged to someone who never rushed, but never hesitated either. Lena opened the door before I could try to stand. She'd stayed the night on my couch, refusing to leave me alone in a house that now felt searched, handled, violated. Thomas stepped inside, his briefcase in hand, his expression serious but not worried. "Mary," he said, "let's get to work." I nodded. Work was the right word. Grief would come later, maybe. Betrayal might settle in someday too. But now there were steps to take. He spread documents across my dining table, his movements neat, deliberate. Lena watched from the side, arms crossed, protective in a way that made me feel both older and strangely less alone. "These are preliminary filings," he explained. "Once submitted, they freeze any action on your assets until the investigation is complete." I touched the edge of the first document. "Meaning Carol can't sell anything or move money?" "Correct. And she can't legally claim you approved anything without proof." "Proof?" The photocopy hidden in my drawer now, the medical logs from Noreen, my own clear signature from yesterday. Evidence was forming like bricks in a wall. Thomas pointed to another page. "This is a temporary reinstatement of full control to you, pending medical evaluation. Your doctor already submitted his report. He stated you were impaired the morning the signature was taken." I exhaled slowly. Not relief, just a step closer to standing on firm ground again. Lena leaned closer. "What about the missing documents? The ones they took?" Thomas nodded. "We'll need to formally request that they be returned. If they refuse, We subpoena. But first we focus on preventing any further damage. He handed me a pen. My hand didn't shake. Not this time. I signed every page with a clarity that felt like reclaiming something inch by inch. When we finished, Thomas gathered the paperwork. "Next," he said, "I recommend we update your will and establish a trust. Discretionary, fully controlled by you." Lena looked at me, startled. "Grandma? Does that mean—" "It means," I said gently, "that whatever I leave behind will go where it's respected." Thomas met my eyes, silent but approving. He knew exactly what I meant. I had spent my life giving, quietly, predictably, to people who never questioned whether they deserved it. But age has a way of stripping illusions, of showing you who stands beside you when you have nothing left to offer but truth. And that person wasn't my daughter. We were interrupted by a sound outside. A car door slammed hard, then heavy steps on the porch. Quick, angry. I didn't need to guess who it was. Carol. She didn't bother knocking. The handle rattled sharply, then the door swung open. She stood in the entryway, breathless, makeup harsh in the daylight, eyes sharp with something close to fear. "Mom," she said, stepping inside, "we need to talk, now." Thomas didn't move. "Mrs. Caldwell," he said calmly, "this is not a good time." She ignored him. "Mom, what did you file? The bank called me this morning. They said access was restricted, and some attorney—" She shot a glare at Thomas. "Told them I'm no longer authorized." "That's correct," Thomas replied. "You had no right," she snapped. I straightened in my chair. I had every right. She stared at me, stunned. "Mom, this isn't you. You're letting him turn you against your own family." "You did that," I said quietly. "Not him." For a moment, she looked genuinely lost, as if she hadn't expected consequences to reach her so quickly. But then the anger returned. Her shield, her habit. "This is all a misunderstanding," she insisted. "You weren't yourself at the hospital. You don't remember signing because you were confused. We were trying to protect your future." I lifted the photocopy from the table and set it in front of her. Her eyes widened. Not guilt, but recognition. "Is this what protection looks like?" I asked. She didn't answer. Thomas closed his briefcase. "Mrs. Caldwell, unless you intend to return the documents taken from your mother's home, I advise you to leave." Her mouth opened, then closed. She turned to me, searching for the mother who once would have softened, who once would have apologized to keep the peace. But that woman had finally found her voice. "I'll be in touch," Carol said through clenched teeth, then walked out, shutting the door so hard the windows rattled. Silence settled over the room. Lena touched my shoulder gently. "Grandma, are you okay?" I nodded. "Yes, for the first time in a long while." Thomas gathered his things. "This is only the beginning," he said, "but you handled it perfectly." "No, not perfectly, just finally." For the next 2 days, the house settled into an uneasy quiet, the kind that comes after a storm but before the next one. I moved slowly with my cane, testing my balance, reclaiming small pieces of my home: the kitchen table, the window chair, the hallway where my husband once hung his coats. It felt strange to walk through rooms that had been handled by other people, my own daughter among them, as if my life were something to be rearranged. Lena stayed close, working from her laptop at the dining table. Sometimes she'd look up and study my face the way a child studies a weathered sky, trying to understand whether rain was coming. "Grandma," she said once, "I don't know how you stayed quiet for so long." I smiled faintly. Most mothers stay quiet longer than they should. It's how we survive our children. On the third day, Thomas returned. He carried a thinner stack of papers this time, but one page lay on top with my name in bold print. "This," he said, "is the updated will. Straightforward, clean, no loopholes." I read it slowly. My house, my accounts, my belongings, all designated exactly where I wanted them to go, not divided by obligation, but by meaning. "And the trust?" I asked. He tapped another sheet. "Established. It activates immediately upon your signature. And it names a single beneficiary, with full control delayed until age 25. I glanced at Lena. Her eyes widened, then softened, then lowered. Not from greed, but from humility. "Grandma, are you sure?" she whispered. "Yes," I said, "because you never asked for any of it." She blinked fast, fighting whatever rose in her throat. Thomas cleared his voice gently. "Once these are filed, your daughter and her husband will have no legal standing. They can challenge, but they'll have no success. The evidence is against them." Evidence. The photocopy. The medication logs. The testimony of the nurses. And my own voice, steady and unmistakable. I signed the trust papers first. My hand didn't waver. I had spent years believing control was something age naturally took from you. But it wasn't age. It was silence. When Thomas left, Lena brewed tea for both of us. She moved quietly, thoughtful. I drank slowly, letting the warm ceramic steady my hands. It was close to noon when the knock came. Not frantic like Carol's, not hesitant. This one was heavy, determined. Male. Gary. Lena opened the door only halfway. He tried to push past her, but she held her ground. "I need to speak with your grandmother," he said. "Right now." She didn't move. "Only if she wants to speak with you." He blinked, surprised. Maybe the first time someone in that house had ever told him no. "Lena," I called. "Let him in." Gary stepped inside, his face flushed, hair uncombed, shirt wrinkled. A man cornered by consequences he didn't expect. "Mary," he began. "The bank called again this morning. They said you restricted the accounts. They said you hired a lawyer. What is going on?" "You know what is going on," I said. "No," he insisted, spreading his hands. "You're making a mistake. Carol only wanted to help. You know how overwhelmed she's been. You know the debt." He froze. He hadn't meant to say that last part. "Debt?" I repeated quietly. He swallowed hard. "I didn't mean—" "Yes," I said. "You did." He looked at the floor, defeated for a moment. "We were in a tight spot. We thought once you were settled, we could figure everything out." "By taking my home?" He shook his head quickly. "Not taking, using, temporarily, just to refinance a few things." "And if I had died?" I asked. He hesitated. And that hesitation was my answer. Lena stepped forward, fury rising in her face, but I lifted my hand lightly. She stopped. "Gary," I said, "go home. Tell my daughter she may speak with my attorney if she has questions, not with me." His mouth tightened. "After everything we've done for you?" It was almost laughable. Almost. But I didn't laugh. I simply looked at him until he dropped his eyes. He left without another word. When the door closed, the house felt lighter, as if someone had opened a window. Lena sat beside me on the sofa. "Grandma," she whispered, "I think they're scared." "Yes," I said. "And fear makes people show their true faces?" She leaned her head gently against my shoulder. "What's next?" she asked. I folded my hands in my lap, feeling, for the first time in weeks, fully present in my own home. "Next," I said. We finished taking back what's mine. The truth didn't arrive in one piece. It came in fragments, small remarks, sidelong glances, mistakes people make when they're frightened. And fear was beginning to follow Carol and Gary like a second shadow. I saw it in the way they circled the situation, trying to salvage control without admitting what they had done. On the fourth morning after my return home, Lena found an envelope slipped halfway under my front door. No stamp, no address. Just my name in my daughter's handwriting. She brought it to me with cautious fingers. Inside were 3 sheets. The first was a letter, written in rushed strokes. Mom, we need to talk. Things are not what you think. You're being influenced by people who don't understand our family. Please call me. C. I noticed what she didn't write. No apology, no explanation, not even a denial. The second page was more telling. An overdue notice from a private lender addressed to Gary. Amounts I had never imagined they were struggling with. Numbers big enough to drown a family. The third was a scribbled budget plan with my house marked as asset leverage. No context needed. I folded the papers slowly, feeling the weight of them settle into something that wasn't shock or sadness, just certainty. They hadn't acted out of malice. They'd acted out of desperation. But desperation doesn't excuse betrayal. It only explains it. Lena sat across from me, arms crossed, anger showing plainly. They were going to use your house. To pay his debt? Yes. And they didn't even plan to tell you? No. She exhaled sharply. How could they do this to you? To their own family? I looked at her gently. People do strange things when they're ashamed, or when they think no one will ever call them to answer for it. She grew quiet, absorbing that. Later that afternoon, Thomas arrived again, as steady as always. I handed him the envelope. He read every page carefully, his expression unreadable, but not surprised. This helps, he said. More evidence of motive. Their financial situation makes their actions look self-serving, not protective. If this goes to court, it strengthens your case. I don't want court, I said. I want my life back. And you're getting it, he replied. Piece by piece. We sat in my dining room, Thomas writing notes, Lena listening intently, me watching dust float lazily through a beam of light. It struck me then how long it had been since someone sat at this table with me to help, instead of to take. Thomas closed his notebook. Mary, there's one more thing we should do. A formal cease and desist. It forbids your daughter and her husband from entering your property or handling any of your documents. Lena straightened, relieved. Good. They shouldn't be near her anymore. But, Thomas added, this will escalate things. They may come here angry. I folded my hands. They've already been angry, and I'm done protecting their comfort. He nodded once. I'll file it today. When he left, the house felt quieter, not empty, but settled, as though the walls themselves recognized that someone was finally standing guard. Evening came gentle and gray, the kind of evening my husband used to call a thinking hour. I sat near the window while Lena made tea. The ache in my hip pulsed softly, like a reminder that recovery was slow but steady, just like everything else happening in my life now. Grandma, Lena said suddenly, handing me a mug, what are you going to do about Mom? I mean, after all this? I looked out at the street. A few scattered leaves skittered along the pavement, pushed by a wind that had somewhere else to be. I don't know yet, I admitted. But I do know this. Forgiveness is not the same as permission. And I've given too much permission in my life. She sat beside me, quiet. When this is over, she said, do you think things will go back to normal? I shook my head. No, but that's not always a bad thing. Normal had been the slow, quiet erosion of my place in my own family. Normal had been politeness, covering neglect. Normal had been silence, mistaken for weakness. Now there was no silence left, and no weakness. Just truth. And truth, once spoken, doesn't go back into the box. The cease and desist was filed by noon. Thomas called to confirm it, his voice steady, firm, almost gentle in its certainty. They'll receive notice today, he said. Expect contact. They won't take silence well. He was right. By late afternoon, the wind had picked up, pushing leaves across the porch, rattling a loose gutter Gary had once promised to fix. Lena and I were in the living room, she reading, me stitching a new hem on a pair of old slacks, when the pounding on the front door began. Not knocking. Pounding. Grandma, Lena whispered, frightened. It's all right, I said quietly, though my heart thudded once, hard. I wasn't surprised to hear Carol's voice through the door, raised, trembling, fighting to sound confident. Mom, open this door. We need to talk. This is getting out of hand. Lena looked at me. Should I call Thomas? Not yet. I stood slowly, leaning on my cane, and walked to the door. Not to open it, just close enough to speak through the wood. I'm listening, I said. Carol's breath hitched. Mom? Please. This isn't you. You're letting that lawyer twist everything. We're family. We're supposed to make decisions together. You made decisions, I answered. Just not with me. She tried the handle, found it locked. I didn't take anything from you that you weren't ready to give. You've been struggling. You needed help. Help, I repeated. Is that what you call forging consent while I was medicated? Searching my home? Planning to use my house to cover debts you hid from me? There was silence. A long one. Behind it, the sound of someone unraveling. Gary didn't mean for you to see that notice, she finally said. It's complicated. You don't understand what we're dealing with. I understand exactly, I said. You were drowning. And instead of asking me for help, you tried to take it. Lena moved closer, her presence quiet but grounding. Carol heard the movement and lowered her voice. Mom, please, let me in. Let's talk like we used to. There was a time those words would have softened me, a time when the promise of being needed would have won out over the truth. But that time had passed quietly, almost invisibly, the moment I felt my hand being guided across a page I never meant to sign. I'm not opening the door, I said. Not today. Carol exhaled sharply, anger breaking through whatever gentle tone she'd tried to muster. You're making a mistake. You're choosing outsiders over your own family. Family, I said softly, doesn't hide keys. It doesn't lie about signatures. It doesn't plan a future that requires someone else's silence. Her voice dropped to a thin, desperate line. If you go through with this legal nonsense, it will ruin everything. No, I replied, steady. It will simply reveal everything. For a moment I thought she would continue arguing, but instead she whispered, I can't believe you're doing this to us. To us, not to me. Then her footsteps retreated across the porch, fast at first, then slower, then gone. A car door slammed, the engine started, and the house fell silent again. Lena let out a long breath she had been holding. Grandma, she sounds scared. She is, I said. People fear losing what they never should have had. We returned to the living room, and I eased myself back into the chair. The house felt still. Not heavy like before, but waiting, as if the walls themselves knew something had shifted. Lena sat beside me, curling her legs under her. "Do you think she'll stop?" "No," I said. "Not until the truth is official." She leaned her head against my shoulder. "Then we'll get there." I rested my hand lightly over hers. Age had thinned my skin, weakened my muscles, slowed my steps. But it had also stripped away illusions. The woman I used to be, the one who avoided confrontation, who filled silence with apologies, who forgave before understanding. She wasn't here anymore, and I didn't mourn her. I felt the weight of my home around me, the lamp my husband bought 40 years ago, the crack in the baseboard he always meant to fix, the window that caught morning light just right. Nothing in this room belonged to my daughter's fear or my son-in-law's debts. It belonged to me, and for the first time in a long while, I felt like I belonged to myself too. The official letter arrived on a Thursday morning, slipped neatly into my mailbox between a gardening catalog and a utility bill. Thomas had warned me it would come this week, but knowing something is coming and holding it in your hands are two different things. Paper has a weight to it, thin but decisive. Lena brought it inside, her fingers trembling slightly as she set it on the table. "Do you want me to open it?" she asked. "No," I said, taking a breath. "I will." I slit the envelope carefully. Inside were two documents. The first confirming the dispute of all signatures collected during my hospitalization. The second, reinstating my full authority over my financial and property decisions. Clean, official, bearing state seals and signatures. It was done. Not the whole journey, but the part that mattered most. The part where my identity had been taken from me without my consent. Now it was back in my hands. The knock came not 15 minutes later. This time it wasn't pounding. It was quiet, almost timid. Lena looked to me. I nodded. She opened the door to reveal Carol, standing alone, hair unbrushed, jacket thrown on as if she'd left the house in a hurry. She held a stack of papers to her chest. My papers. She stepped inside without waiting to be invited, her movements stiff, unsure. Thomas had likely received his copy too, and she must have realized the fight was no longer in her hands. "Mom," she said, her voice small, "I brought everything back." She set the stack on the dining table. My folders, my documents, even the pages torn from my notebook, taped together like an apology made out of office supplies. For a moment, no one spoke. Then she took a breath and began her defense. Soft, wavering, threadbare. "We were trying to help. You don't understand the pressure. Gary's business took a hit after the pandemic, and the lender, well, they were threatening court. We were losing everything, Mom. And I thought since you weren't using the house fully, and since it would all come to me someday anyway, that maybe—" She stopped. The words she hadn't said hung in the quiet. "Maybe you wouldn't notice. Maybe you wouldn't remember. Maybe you wouldn't matter." Lena stood beside me, silent but present, protective in a way I'd never known my own daughter to be. Carol pressed her hands together. "I shouldn't have done it that way. I know, but I wasn't trying to hurt you." I looked at her for a long time. I saw the girl she once was, bright, eager, always wanting more from the world than it was willing to give. I saw the woman she became, tense, polished, carrying disappointments she never spoke aloud. And I saw the person standing before me now, cornered, frightened, not because she'd almost lost me, but because she'd almost lost what she believed she was entitled to. "Carol," I said quietly, "you made choices. Not out of love, out of fear. and instead of asking me for help, you tried to take it." She blinked hard, fighting tears or pride. I couldn't tell which. "I didn't think you'd understand," she whispered. "That," I said, "was your mistake, not mine." She lowered her eyes. "So, what happens now? Do you want to cut me out of everything? Is that what this lawyer convinced you to do?" "No," I answered. "I did that myself." Her head jerked up. "Mom." "I won't pretend your choices didn't have consequences," I said. "You removed yourself long before any paper made it official." She stared at me, stunned. For the first time in her life, she seemed to understand that my gentleness had never meant weakness, and that losing my gentleness was a far greater punishment than anything a judge could deliver. I gestured toward the door. "You may go, Carol. We will speak again when you're ready to talk truth, not excuses." She looked at the table, the papers she had taken, the life she had tried to reorganize, and then at me one last time, as though searching for a version of me who might still soften. But that woman was gone. She left quietly, closing the door behind her with a soft final click. Lena came to my side. "Grandma, are you all right?" I rested my hand over hers. "Yes," I said. "Today I am." For the first time, I wasn't simply holding on. I was standing up. The house felt different once the papers were returned. Not restored, not untouched, but steadier, as if it had exhaled after holding its breath too long. I spent the next morning walking slowly from room to room, touching the backs of chairs, the tops of picture frames, the edges of shelves, claiming them again, gently, without ceremony. Lena followed behind me at a respectful distance, letting me move at my own pace. She understood, without my saying it, that this wasn't about checking belongings. It was about reminding myself that the home still remembered me, even if parts of my family had tried to forget who I was. In the afternoon, she brewed tea and brought it to the sunroom, the place where I used to sit with my husband every spring. I lowered myself into the armchair, the fabric softened from years of use. "You look lighter today," Lena said softly. "I am," I answered. "Some things have settled." She hesitated before asking, "Do you regret any of it?" I thought about that. Regret is a complicated thing. It sneaks into corners motherhood never prepares you for. But as I looked around, the afternoon light stretching across the carpet, the steady hum of my own quiet life returning, I found no regret waiting inside me. "I regret letting it go on for so long," I said. "Not what I did to stop it." Lena nodded, folding her legs under her like she used to as a child. She didn't treat me like someone fragile. She treated me like someone who deserved truth. "Mom's not talking to anyone," she said. "She hasn't left the house much. Dad's been trying to fix things, but he keeps making it worse." "They'll have to face what they did," I replied. "Not because I want revenge, but because avoiding the truth has been their habit for too many years." Lena looked down at her mug. "Do you think she'll ever apologize?" "That depends," I said with a sigh. "Some people apologize only after they lose something. Others apologize when they finally see themselves clearly. Your mother has avoided mirrors for a long time." It wasn't bitterness, just an observation made from a lifetime of watching her turn away from anything that forced self-reflection. A car passed slowly outside. Somewhere down the block, a dog barked. Ordinary sounds, comforting sounds. For the first time since the hospital, I didn't flinch at the idea of being alone in my own home. "Thomas called," Lena said. "He said everything is finalized." I nodded. "Yes, the trust is in place. My accounts are secure, and the house is legally untouchable. I paused. It feels strange, not triumphant, just right. Lena smiled. I'm proud of you. I chuckled softly. That's usually something a grandmother says to a granddaughter. She leaned her head against my shoulder. Well, you earned it too. We sat quietly, watching light filter through the curtains. The world outside moved at its gentle pace, unaware of the battles fought inside these walls. And I realized, with a slow settling of breath, that my fight was no longer outward. It was inward, toward peace, not defense. Later, I tended to my plants, watering each one carefully. My hip ached, but it didn't stop me. Pain, at my age, was a familiar companion. Less frightening than silence, less dangerous than trust misplaced. Just before evening, I stepped outside onto the porch. The air was cool, carrying the promise of rain. Across the street, neighbors waved. Ordinary life, steady and unburdened. For the first time in months, I felt myself standing in it fully, without apology. Lena joined me, slipping her hand into mine. What now, Grandma? She asked. Now, I said, watching the sky darken into a soft blue. I live the life they tried to make small. She squeezed my fingers. Young strength meeting old. There was no victory parade, no dramatic ending, just a quiet reclaiming of space that had always been mine. And sometimes that is the truest kind of triumph. I woke up earlier than usual that morning, not from pain, not from worry, just from the quiet. A kind quiet. The sort that settles only when a long fight has ended. I sat up slowly, letting my joints remind me of my age, letting the room remind me of my life. Sunlight crept across the floor in soft patches, the same sunlight I'd watched for nearly 40 years from this very bed. It felt different now, not because it had changed, but because I finally had the freedom to notice it again. Lena made oatmeal in the kitchen, humming under her breath. She didn't stay every night anymore. She had her own life to return to. But today, she'd stayed just in case. Young people always think transformation needs witnesses, but some victories are meant to be held quietly. After breakfast, she left for her college classes, promising to stop by later. When the door closed behind her, I walked through the house alone, without fear, without hesitation. Every object I touched felt like something returned to me after being mistakenly taken. The afternoon slipped by gently. I sorted old linens, watered plants, paid bills with a steadiness I thought I'd lost. When I stepped onto the porch, the air carried the faint smell of damp earth. Across the street, Mrs. Palmer waved. I waved back. Nothing extraordinary. But sometimes, ordinary is the greatest luxury of all. I sat in my porch chair, watching the neighborhood ease through its rhythms. Children on bicycles, a delivery truck, a couple walking their dog. Life continued, indifferent to the battles families fight behind closed doors. I thought of Carol, not with anger, not with forgiveness either, but with a kind of tired understanding. People break in the places they were never taught to bend. She may never say she's sorry. She may never understand the depth of what she attempted. That's her burden now, not mine. As for me, I reclaimed more than my home these past weeks. I reclaimed my voice, my boundaries, the part of myself I'd set aside because motherhood, widowhood, and age trained me to make room for everyone else. That part is mine again. Evening settled slowly, painting the sky in dusky grays and soft purples. I wrapped a shawl around my shoulders and sat a while longer, breathing in the cool air. My life wasn't grand or loud. It didn't need to be. dignity rarely raises its voice. Later, inside, I turned off the lights one by one, each click an ending, each ending a beginning. At my bedroom door, I paused, not out of fear, but gratitude. Not for what happened, but for what endured. I am still here. I still choose. I still belong to myself. And if age has given me anything worth sharing, it is this. Silence is not kindness, and endurance is not the same as surrender. I lay down, pulling the blanket to my chest, letting the dark settle softly over me. Tomorrow would come like all days do, quiet or loud, easy or difficult, but it would come to me on my own terms. And that, at 74, is a victory no one will take from me again. Before sleep claimed me, one last thought rose, clear and steady. We are never too old to stand up. We are only ever too quiet. So here is what I say to every woman who has swallowed more than she should, waited longer than she needed, forgiven without being asked. Don't let anyone decide your worth, your choices, or your future for you. Stand up while you can. Speak while your voice still belongs to you. Your life is yours. Claim it.